This is Golden Years, a roadmap to navigate retirement with Mark Cordner, the podcast.
I want to talk about the stock market right now because it seems to react quickly to any new economic numbers that really come in. But should you do the same? Well, here's Matt Orton, and he's with Raymond James. Recently, he said this on Fox Business.
We all know the economy is starting to slow. We know there's cracks starting to form in the labor market. We know the consumer is starting to slow down. But what is evident when I listen to all of the different corporate earnings reports, when I go talk to consumers and I travel around, people are still spending money and corporate America is continuing to do well. So when you put all of that together, I think it paints a reasonably bright picture for the overall economy, and it gives me optimism in this bull market going forward.
Well, I'm glad he's got some optimism. I think that says a lot right there. But, it's really tough for normal folks, myself included, our listeners out there, to kind of cut out the noise and the anxiety when you start hearing about the market roller coaster going up and down all around. So how do you kind of ease those fears?
Well, this is a great point. I love to address this because a lot of people really do feel like they're being buffeted by these different winds of opinion, as it were. And I think the best advice we can give people is two-part. First, true investors think in terms of decades and not in terms of days. And so we need to always keep that long-term consideration. But then we also need to keep perspective on these media guru types. I think the best thing people can do is turn off the TV, because so many of these media types are simply spouting what is best for their advertisers. So many of these people want to get you all excited because the Dow dropped 1 or 2 points today or whatever it is. We got to remember the Dow Jones Industrial Average basically is 30 stocks, primarily tech-oriented. The S&P 500 is only 500 companies in the United States. And so, yes, those are reflective of certain segments of the market, but my clients are invested in over 32,000 different individual holdings. And so when 30 stocks go down or when 500 stocks go down, it's not cause to panic and to get the computer going in your underwear at the middle of the night so you can go online and change your accounts. No, but seriously,
yeah, you're right.
The problem here is that when people get excited and they start changing their accounts, what happens is twofold. One, they generate fees for Wall Street, which is exactly what the media types were trying to get them to do to satisfy their advertisers. They start churning their accounts, and that generates fees for Wall Street. That harms the investor. The second is the Dalbar does consumer behavior studies every year. And what they've repeatedly said is that the average investor actually realizes about 1/3 of the market's natural returns because they start engaging in these self-harming practices that we've been talking about. So again, I think the best advice is to take a long view and turn off the TV.
So let's say if you were to inherit money, how long do you think you could make it last? Research shows that if you're getting $5,000, $50,000, or even $500,000, the money would be gone within 2 to 4 years. And one study shows that when people inherit money, they'll buy a new car within 19 days. So how do you help make sure an inheritance lasts much longer? When individuals come in and they sit down, they say, I want to pass this and this on to my kids, my grandkids, what have you.
Oh, another great question, because so many baby boomers are experiencing this. They're receiving inheritances. Hopefully they know in advance that something's coming. They may not know the exact details, but we start to have those conversations very early on, preferably in our very first introductory appointment, as to what may come in your horizon. Because if there's not a plan in place, you're exactly right. Human nature is such that money gets blown through very quickly. I mean, I've seen this so many times in my 30 plus years of working with people. That the studies that we've seen always suggest that lottery winners and inheritance recipients typically blow through the money in about 18 months. And so they don't even make it the 2 to 3 years that you're describing. And I've absolutely seen this happen. I mean, certain debt often gets paid off first, and then there's maybe a trip, then a kitchen gets remodeled, and before you know it, there's a new watch and, different vacations and things.
It was quick.
I've seen one couple, they've gone on 10 cruises in the last 2 years. And I'm like, holy cow.
Whoa.
Because that money that we thought was going to last now may not. And so I'm not knocking the cruises and all that. We all have our choices, but human nature is such that it really helps to have a financial advisor there who can build structure into your plan. So some of the investments, for example, that we use are what we call back-end loaded. They're designed to actually discourage pulling money out in the early days, kind of like a CD at the bank. With CDs, if you leave, you can tie up your money, quote unquote, for a period of 6 to 12 months. If you leave early, there's a little bit of a penalty and that you lose the earnings. Well, instruments like that can be very helpful to people simply because they put a pause to the spending impulse. The second thing is, don't leave the money in your checking account. Let's put it out at arm's length. Let's put it with an investment company or a separate bank that you don't typically deal with, so that you have to actually go out of your way a little bit to get at that money. Because again, it's just human nature that when it's there, it's very easy to spend through it. And we just have to recognize that we're all human. So the advisor really should be part of that, I think, to help coach and build those structures so that people don't hurt themselves inadvertently.
Yeah, and I mean, it also goes back to the conversation of, do you want to leave any money behind? How and where and who do you want it to go to? I mean, having these conversations and the right document in place are essential, guys. I cannot stress that enough. I mean, and that's when you have folks coming out of the woodworks. There's going to be a lot of arguing and whatnot. You don't want any of that. So if you've decided, listen, I'm going to spend everything down to the last penny and that's it, good for you. If you've decided that you want to leave your kids or grandkids some sort of amount of money or maybe possessions or assets or whatever it is, you want to make sure that the proper documentation is in place. I mean, Mark, this is also a process. This isn't just like, I would like this to go to Sally and this go to Joe. I mean, there's a process and paperwork to it.
There should be, absolutely. Because again, human nature is to blow through it. You know, people who receive money look at it much differently than people who actually earned it. And so there's different perspectives there. And so, it's very easy. Look at this with all of our children. They spend money more easily than parents typically do because the parents are the ones who had to clock in and sweat and with blood, sweat, tears, all that kind of stuff to earn the money. And so same thing with inheritances, both from the giver's standpoint as well as the recipient. There needs to be structure built in. So I'm a big, big advocate of having an attorney on the team. Matter of fact, I'd love to interview an attorney at one point here because I think that they're a key part of the planning team. And there should be a CPA, an attorney, as well as a financial advisor who are all working cooperatively to look after the client's best interests. So, get together with an attorney if you haven't. Get together with the financial advisor. We'd love to have these conversations with people and show them ways to protect themselves from themselves.
Absolutely.
Make sure that their legacy is realized the way they want it to be.
Now, Mark, I know you're a big fan of music, right? Who isn't? But I have to know, are you a fan of the band The Who?
Oh, yeah, Roger Daltrey. Yeah, I grew up in Europe in the 70s when Pinball Wizard was the anthem, as it were. And I spent many, many hours in the military bases playing pinball. That was my idea of Nirvana. So, Roger Daltrey is such a great personality because, look at his career. He started in music and then he's done all this stuff on TV. I remember him in the old Highlander series. He's such a fun, optimistic guy. I think he set a great example for us that, these decisions that we make don't always have to be permanent. We're not always stuck. We can leave one industry and start another. And I see this a lot with clients who, sometimes they just are burnt out and they need to make a change. And so they stop for a period of time and they may or may not be ready financially. That's certainly an important consideration, but they'll often go back into a different type of work, maybe an entirely different career field, because it's something that feeds their soul as well as their pocketbook. So they're not really always looking to make quite as much money, but they want to stay engaged socially and do something that gives them a feeling of contributing to society. And so I can think of an example of a widowed client I worked with. I'm just sitting here thinking, it's been almost 20 years now she's been widowed, but when her husband passed, she had such a positive experience with the hospice care that she actually decided to go back in and initially volunteer and then was actually hired in a hospice setting. She saw the tremendous service that was being given to families during that difficult transition, and she felt it in her heart to want to be part of that. And so again, it started out as volunteer, but then it became a job, and it wasn't as high earning as her prior work had been, but it was very satisfying for her. And very importantly, it bought time so that she didn't have to tap into her retirement accounts. It bought time so that she could think through kind of that next chapter in her life. And she's no longer working in that. She's done a couple other things since. She does a whole lot of hiking, but it's more quality of life now. But the point is, it wasn't one permanent decision. It can be multiple decisions. Now, my caution is, if you're in a high-paying field and perhaps a specialty field, it's often easier to get out than it is to get back in. But if you don't necessarily need to get back into that exact same field, if your interests may be varied, then we're in a wonderful era of time when people are thinking differently. It used to be they'd quit work. It was kind of like dropping off a cliff and then go fishing and not look back. But now we're seeing this transition into retirement from full-time to part-time work before they're fully out of the workforce. And sometimes that part-time work may feed the soul. So I love these Roger Daltrey kind of examples because he gets in and out and he's living. He just seems to be a happy personality. I think we can all learn from him.
Investment advisory services offered through Golden Years Financial LLC, a registered investment advisory firm. Insurance is offered through Golden Years Insurance Services. These firms do not provide legal or tax advice. Consult your own legal and tax advisors before taking actions that may have tax implications. Investing in securities involves risk, including the potential loss of principal. Insurance contracts' principal protection is based on the claim-paying ability of the respective insurer. None of the information contained on this website shall constitute an offer to sell or solicit to buy a security or insurance product. The information and opinions contained on this site or requested from this site are provided by third parties believed to be reliable, but accuracy and completeness cannot be guaranteed. They are provided for informational purposes only and are not a solicitation to buy or sell any of the products mentioned. Any media logos and/or trademarks contained herein are the property of their respective owners, and no endorsement by those owners of Mark Cordner, Golden Years Financial, or Golden Years Insurance is stated or implied.